Man.
Oh, change the theme music up.
That was nice.
Change the intro music up for you on a Free Flag Feel Good, Fake It Till You Make It, Ric Flair, woo! And we always make it a Football Friday right here on Texas Football Friday live stream. Thank you guys for joining us. I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers, joined by the estimable Jerry Hamilton, and of course also joined by the newest member of the On Texas Football family, our man Jeff Howe. We got a lot to get into, of course. Your questions, comments, we'll dive into that. Super chats jump to the front of the line. You can interrupt the show at any time. Lots of big news on the 40 Acres coaching staff finalized. We'll talk about that and get into it as well. Of course, recruiting nuggets from Jerry. But first, my man Jeff has got a little something to share with the people at the top.
Yeah, nothing major, but I am in the process. I moved my office to a different room in the house, so I got to move all the memorabilia's got to move. This never comes off the wall, but it did today. Just going to show everybody. This is a 2001 signed team poster, and look right there.
Oh wow,
that is Rod B in his prime right there.
Look at that.
And Rod, they had to put Rod like right next to Nordco in the picture with the autograph.
Wait. We'll pull that picture back. Rod, did you pick that off?
Oh, hold on. What was it? I think it was a PBU. I believe that's in. Yeah, I think that's a PBU. I don't know if I got that one. That's a PBU. I remember my picks. I didn't have many of them. So that's
who's number 5 in the photo?
Mott Brooks.
That's Brooks.
That's Mott.
Yeah, Roy Williams. Got Everett Rawls in there.
Who's on the other side? Who's on the other side of the photo?
Got Quinn Jammer on that joint.
Mike Williams.
BJ Johnson,
Kirk Hughes, BJ Johnson, Chris Sims.
Wow,
there you go.
That's great, right? That's Corey Redden. That's a great place to start, right there, man. That's good.
Mike,
D.D. Lewis, yeah, that's pretty good.
I'm a little jealous. I'm jealous. I think I'm jealous of that. I ain't gonna lie to you. I'm jealous.
Yeah,
that's a nice one. That's good. Well done, Jeff.
Like
that's traveled with. That's made like 5, 6, 7 moves with me now. So. Still kicking.
Oh, yeah. That made it, dude. That like this. Because I know you had that before you got married and everything, right? Before you met wifey.
Oh yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff, as you know, people know when you move in with wifey, it's to get purged. Exactly. Jerry's like, hey, what happened to my? I didn't think you needed that. So the fact that it made it all the way through, and even wifey, she didn't throw it away and toss it away, means that it really meant something to you. There you go. That's legit. That's legit. All right.
That's just figured I'd show. I never show off anything, but that never comes off the wall, but it did. So I figured I'd just show that off to get us started.
Yeah. Hey, Joe Z, show us your 2013 Oregon team photo that's autographed next time. Put that up on TexasFootball.com.
All right. Let's get to it. You guys, obviously. All your questions, comments, whatever you guys want to talk about, throw it out there. We'll try to answer and address as many of them as we can throughout the program. But you guys know how it works. If you really, really got a hankering for us to address a topic, just throw a super chat on it and we'll hit it right post haste. All right. How dare you, Jerry? All right. Can we talk about the finalized coaching staff here? Because I'm kind of excited about this, guys, honestly. And it was obviously news that was reported yesterday. You guys, I'm sure, talked about it. I wasn't on drive yesterday, so I need to get a chance to get into it a little bit. And of course, we'll talk about the spring game, of course, as well, because Sark, they basically confirming some of the speculation that there will be no spring game for Texas. We'll get into that too. But the coaching staff has been finalized, so the staff updates, in addition to the continuity that will remain on the coaching staff for Texas. Terry Joseph, and I'll give Bobby a lot of credit. Bobby's been saying this from the get-go. He said they were going to divide up the duties, the coaching duties in the secondary. That's exactly what they did. Terry Joseph is the defensive passing game coordinator and safety and secondary coach. All right, overall. So he'll go oversee the entire secondary. Mark Orfe, as we know, the cornerbacks coach, the latest hire for them. And at Nichols, and we'll just kind of break this down and talk about the secondary a little bit first here, guys, before we move on. Kenodo Hudson, the Nichols coach. So just as Bobby predicted, they wanted to fill that same role they had, which Coach Hazleton, who did a great job with the Nichols last season, moved on. And now they have a Nichols coach as well. He was on the staff as a defensive analyst last year. And so it was a story that kind of went under the radar, Jerry. But obviously, Coach Sark likes him a lot.
Yeah, he was at USC for a few years. He came to Texas. He was the corners coach in 2023 at Ole Miss, and he was at Texas as an analyst last year. And I knew I saw him. I saw him in our open practice. I knew he was there, kind of the extra set of eyes with the DBs. But that continues what Sark loves, the continuity, right? I mean, so he didn't go out and have to find two new defensive back coaches. Essentially, he found one in Orfe, one of the top up-and-coming corner coaches, moved Terry Joseph to safety, and Kenoto Hudson, who was sitting in on all the same meetings with Scotty Hazelton and Terry Joseph and Blake Gideon and Johnny Nansen and PK, rolls right into that Nichols coach, and he already has familiarity with the kids, the roster. I like that a lot, honestly. So I think the addition of Orfe, and by the way, Kenoto Hudson's from Tampa. If you look at all the kids he signed, the majority are from Florida. And I'm not saying he's going to be an on-the-road recruiter very often. But, again, we're going to break this down when we get to Aaron Joe and Josh Dunson. All these hires, even Orfe, even though he's from Houston and North Shore High, he was the Florida recruiter for Rutgers. I mean, all these hires have strong Florida ties, Georgia ties, and it just continues this theme. And what I've said, when Sark is maximizing recruiting at Texas, 80 to 85% of his classes, in my estimation, are come from Texas, Florida, Georgia, and then you piece together the rest of it with other national guys around that, and maybe Louisiana, it may be in Alabama, it may be California, obviously maybe an Arizona kid, at times maybe somebody from Las Vegas. But if you're working at 80% of your classes are from those three states at the level Texas is recruiting at, you're going to be one of the most talented programs in the country. But Rod, so I like it from a recruiting perspective, especially when we get into more of these guys.
Yep. I like it. I was just kind of looking at some of his background, some of the places he's been. Ole Miss cornerbacks coach there in 2023, Western Kentucky in 21 and 22 as a cornerbacks coach. He was at Illinois as a DB's coach there, Florida Atlantic before that. And so, I'm always looking at, and I like Jared, we'll get into kind of the specifics about the background of these guys. Jeff, I'm always looking from a football theorist perspective. And kind of what kind of techniques these guys are teaching. I still hold fast to my theory that I think they're going to go to a little bit more man-to-man and play some more man, even some more press man and Mark Orfe. We talked about it. Actually, check out Football Theory, where, at Rutgers, they played, a top 25 rate of man-to-man there. So he was used to teaching that technique. Actually, a lot of bump and run man-to-man too, a lot of press man. And look at the background of Kenoto Hudson. It's very interesting. Been in systems, so the things he's had to teach, right? The type of techniques he's had to teach cornerbacks and teach DBs. Ole Miss, there in 2023, they ran a lot of two-man, actually, and a lot of cover one. So that's man and two-man. Two-man is actually a nice change-up. For those who don't know what two-man is, it's just man under. You basically play underneath the receiver because you got two deep safeties over the top. So you can jump underneath routes. I'm just looking at the coverages they played a lot of. In 2021 at Western Kentucky, in 2021-22, under Maurice Crum and I believe there's another Tyson Summers, was the name of his DC. Those first 2 years, they played a lot of cover zero, cover one, and a high percentage of two-man, man under. Look at Illinois, he was under with Lovie Smith. Lovie Smith was famously he loved a Tampa 2 guy, right? Old school. I played under Lovie Smith, learned his way of the Tampa 2. In Florida Atlantic, he was coaching cornerbacks there under Chris Kiffin, actually, who was the defensive coordinator there, who also famously, I played under Monty Kiffin, his dad, and they was teaching a lot of Tampa 2. Back when I was in Tampa, when Mike Tomlin was still in that room too, and everybody was teaching Tampa 2. Now you do have the inverted Tampa 2. I'm not saying this is the case, but in terms of diversifying coverages, Texas played a lot of that inverted Tampa look versus Ohio State with the inverted defender. So in terms of the places they could go, I think you could get more of them playing some of the inverted Tampa 2, which they did this year for the first time with Johnny Nansen. You could get them playing, if they play more press man and more man coverage, the nice counter to it, or at least a change up with it, is to play two-man where guys can play underneath and jump routes. or I think you end up playing a little cover 2 period with guys pressing, all right, guys pressing, and end up playing the inverted Tampa 2. So some of the change ups to playing more man, or some of the techniques that Kenoto Hudson I think is very familiar with in terms of the techniques that he's taught. So
yeah, the other thing I'd say about Kenoto Hudson, Rod, is you look at his time at SC, the different defensive coordinators, because he was a defensive analyst, but they had a different title for him when he was at SC. But Ed Orgeron, who we know plays a ton of man coverage, almost exclusively man coverage. Justin Wilcox, who's probably one of the better defensive minds in college football. And then Clancy Pendergast, the guy that's done it in college, in the NFL. So he's pretty well versed. He's gotten a pretty good sample of different defensive minds. What's interesting to me about him coaching nickel specifically, knowing that he's a disciple of Lovie Smith, spent some time around Lovie Smith, and whether it was Lovie Smith as the coordinator or Monty Kiffin, what was one of the things that made that Tampa 2 go? When we talk about Derek Brooks as a middle linebacker, that was a really big part of it. Rondé Barber may be the best nickel that ever played the game. I mean, he's in that discussion.
Yes.
So that's a huge part of that defense. So, the fact that he's been in systems where the nickel is hugely important, I do like that. I don't think I'm making too much of that. I know at times we can, but I feel like, hey, this guy's been around defensive coordinators who understand. And Rod, we talk about that with the nickel position in general. Like, it's not just, hey, throw your best cover guy on the slot and let him go. PJ Locke once best explained the nickel position to me. He said, 1 minute I'm covering maybe the fastest guy on the field in the slot. He said the next minute I'm fitting the run outside the C gap, and I've got to take on a 330-pound pulling guard. Like, that's just life as a nickelback in football today. So it takes instincts, football IQ. You got to have some toughness. You got to have some ball skills. It's a pretty wide skill set. And Jerry, I just like the fact that you got a guy that, again, has been in systems where he knows how important that nickel is.
Yeah, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. And by the way, so La'Allen Clark is officially the edge coach. And we talked about this. I was told his job is not just edge coach. He's edge recruiting as well. So it'll be La'Allen Clark. It's his job to build the relationship with the edges. He'll get assists from Kenny Baker in PK and then Sark when that time comes in recruiting. But La'Allen Clark, he's the one that made the offer to Kamari Brooks, the kid out of Bogart, Georgia, North Oconee, a couple of days ago. So La'Allen Clark, this is his deal. As he develops as a coach, because he's been the analyst, now he's the edge coach. Now he's developing his recruiting chops too. He's a Baton Rouge guy, but I think it's really smart to have him be the edge, the recruiting guy, the guy that's building the relationships with these kids, because he's going to be the one coaching them. Mm-hmm. And it'd be easy to just say, "Oh, here's our edge pass rush coach," but you're going to deal with Kenny Baker, who probably has too much on his plate at that point, and PK. And Sark. Well, then you're not really having all of those conversations with that La'Allen Clark, who's the guy who's going to be your pass rushing and edge coach. So he's taking over edge recruiting. And Kenny Baker will assist him, obviously, in PK and Sark at points in times. But it also leads to this point, Rod and Jeff. We saw Chris Gilbert on the road last year more than ever. I think we're getting to a point where PK is the coordinator of the defense. And I think in his place this spring in recruiting, you're going to see La'Allen Clark on the road, seeing the edges. That's the only way it can work. You can't ask him to be the guy who builds the relationships and then doesn't go out and see them. Mm-hmm. So I think we're getting to the point where we're going to see even less of PK on the road at times and more integrating some of these other guys in. Like Chris Gilbert was on the road a lot last year. Instead of PK, you're going to see this mix and match. You're going to see La'Allen Clark on the road, seeing the edges. I would suspect some in May. It's starting in late April, early May. So I think you're seeing a lot of these things. This Sark's kind of, I don't know, call it his master plan. I would say him evolving with the changes in college football, and you're kind of seeing his plan take shape.
Jerry, I'll give you one more. You look at this revamped staff, some guy, and I like the fact that Sark has been able to promote some analysts. We mentioned Kenoto Hudson. He and Kenny Baker were on that Western Kentucky staff under Tyson Helton. They were there together. So they've worked together before, even before Hudson got to Texas. But like, take Mike Bumonte, right, as the assistant quarterbacks coach. I like this because, once you get through with spring ball, whatever that looks like this year, that's when Sark goes on the speaking tours and he'll do this, that, and the other. He's out of the office. And if AJ Milwaukee's on the road, it gives Arch Manning, Trey Owens, the rest of those quarterbacks, there's always going to be somebody in the office. If you've got a question about the offense or drills or whatever, somebody you trust that's an on-field coach is always going to be in the office. So I like that too. It's not just, hey, let's see how many guys we can put on the field or how many staff positions we can fill. It's got to make sense, and it's fun to sit here and kind of put these pieces of the puzzle together.
Yeah, and to your point, these aren't $75,000 jobs.
Right.
These are $300K type jobs. So this is not just sitting in the office all day in the film room making some recruiting calls if you're Alan Clark. This is cutting your teeth in recruiting and being out there and being part of the evaluation.
Yep. No, it's interesting. It's I'm with you. I like that point you made there, Jeff, about them promoting a lot of the the analysts that they've had on the staff. They've been around the program. Players have been kind of acclimated to them, and they're familiar with them as well. All right, before we get back to those, let me thank one of our sponsors for today's program, and we got a super chat that we got to get to as well. But I want to get back to some of the other staff updates. Let's thank our friends over at Tackle Addict. TackleAddict.com. That's right, folks. If you're an avid fisherman who's always searching for the right supplies, do yourself a favor and check out TackleAddict.com. Owned and operated by former and legendary lifetime Longhorn, in my opinion, Brian Robertson, and former Longhorn baseball great Brandon Belt. Tackle Addict has everything you need for the best in today's fishing equipment. Tackle Addict is for the everyday fisherman and serious pros alike. Get their products shipped to you directly from the shores of Lake Sam Rayburn. That's TackleAddict.com, ADDICT.com. That's TackleAddict.com. And thank you to Brian and Brandon, both of those guys. Say hook them from TackleAddict.com. We appreciate them sponsoring this program for you. All right, we'll get back to those staff updates. We got a super chat here. You guys know how to work super chats. Interrupt the program at any time. It's 420 somewhere. He says, Rod B, if you were hired as the DC for this upcoming season for Texas, what would the type of defense would you implement, and what would your philosophy be? Any players you would move to different positions? That is a fantastic question. It's 420 somewhere, and I want to get Jerry and Jeff's thoughts. Just off top, I would say this. I really like the direction the defense is going. Johnny Nansen. And Sark has made a lot of hires that have been fun to follow. Johnny Nansen was one of my favorite hires to research and follow. And my prediction was when he comes, they're gonna get exotic. They're about to get freaky on defense. And because PK, that's not really PK's, that's not his MO. PK he's a pretty kind of vanilla guy in terms of his defensive coverages, exotic looks. He didn't have a lot of stuff like that. That's just not really his style of play. But Johnny Nansen is the exact opposite. And my prediction came true, right? They started doing a lot of exotic stuff. I would stay on that track. You have so many elite, unique athletes, and you're bringing more and more of them to the table every day. Colin Simmons is a great example of it, right? In the NASCAR package that I've talked ad nauseum about. But man, you had a 3D tackle package. You had the NASCAR. You played 3 high. You played big nickel, played dime for the first time really since PK's been here. They had 3-4, they had a 3-3-5, they had a 4-2-5, they had a 4-1-6, a 3-2-6. They were all over the place in terms of right. You agree with this, Jeff, in terms of they were matchup based week to week, but also they were exotic because they wanted to weaponize certain players, I believe. And find a way to get them on the field, guys like Jelani McDonald and Constantine. So it's for 20 sorry, long story short, short story long, whatever. I would stay on the path of being exotic. I would want more man coverage too. They're not very far from what I ideally want their defense to be. And think about it, why would you? They got a really good pass rush. They're tighter in coverage now. I think the exotics are going to help a lot by weaponizing some of these younger guys.
We've seen Texas defenses that were exotic just for the sake of being exotic. And that's how you end up with, critical third downs where Alex Okafor or Joseph Osai's dropped like 30 yards off the ball, which if that's your call on third down, then scrap it. I don't care who made it up. Just it's a dumb call. Get rid of it. Me real quick, just three quick things, and then I'll turn it over to you, Jerry. I just like being more aggressive with my down linemen. So if it's me, I would slant more, some more twists, play some more games up front, especially with those young guys. If you want to get Myron Charles or Josiah Sharman there, hell, even Alex January, just play some more games, just so I'm not asking those guys just to go win one-on-one all the time. Free them up a little bit. The other thing I would do, Rod, we talked about this, I would kind of go to more 3 high, because the thought of Jelani McDonald being the middle safety in a 3 high defense just really excites me, gets my football pants excited. And the third thing, we talk about position changes, Jerry. I don't know if this one grabs you or not, but not necessarily a defensive position change, but if spring ball is the time to experiment, right? I would go on offense. I would take Aaron Butler and move him to defensive back, either corner or nickel. Because I think for 2 reasons. I think the speed plays well there, and if the speed plays well there and he's got some physicality, I want him to be one of my gunners on punt coverage, because that was an area where you were really deficient last year.
Yeah, that would be interesting. So the Aaron Butler I thought is interesting. By the way, I thought you were going to break out into a joy mode earlier, Jeff, when you said
I thought about it.
No. If you want me to send you the read real quick, we had one this morning. Aaron Butler decommitted from USC because they wanted to play him at corner is the issue there. So he would have to be open to change more than he was coming out of high school, I think. But to your point, though, Jeff, with him, and I'm not saying he's going to move Deion Sanders, and then we're saying he could play wide out, but I don't. Let's see what Deion was really recruiting him as. I'm not sure anybody knows Deion. Would he actually tell us? But that'll be interesting, because if early this spring, if Butler doesn't make a big move at receiver, what do? That means you're getting passed by younger guys.
Yeah. Yep.
If you don't make a move at receiver, we saw it last year. We talked about this at receiver. DeAndre Moore and Jonte Cook, where they got a lot of the ones in spring practice, and then even early in fall camp. Even Matthew Golden was not getting ones at the time. But once somebody kind of nudged out Jonte, now we know now Jonte had a lot of issues that we can talk about. But Jonte got nudged out. DeAndre Moore did not. And, if Butler doesn't make a move at receiver this spring, what happens? Because he is talented enough to play multiple spots. But what'll be interesting to me, Jeff, is you're talking about the Jelani, the 3 high safety. I want to know what they're going to do at nickel next year. This spring's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
Because do they feel like they need a bigger nickel in the conference with Jelani McDonald? They feel like they need a bigger nickel next year. I don't know. I don't have the answer. It's going to be that's one of the things I'm going to be interested to see. And also what we hear about corner, Rod, because Mark Orfe, he got the job. He's in Austin now, and he's probably seen some of those kids on tape through recruiting. Mm-hmm. He's never worked. He doesn't know what he has yet at corner. No. He hasn't known Cade Phillips. He hasn't coached Cade Phillips. He hasn't coached Caleb Chester, Santana Wilson, any of these guys. So it's going to be interesting with him. And we talked about that with Chad Scott at running back. We have some running back portal questions we'll get to, but we have 2 new coaches that came into the staff that literally they may know those guys from recruiting. Chad Scott watched Cedric Baxter. He offered him. He watched Jarrett Gibson. He probably watched James Simon. But that's different from coaching those guys and sitting in a room with them and seeing how they interact with you and an understanding of the way you coach. So it's going to be interesting to see this spring. It's not going to be full pads, which we're going to get to, because that's, Rod, you've been part of this. When coaches change, it doesn't mean they have favorites versus other kids, but maybe they communicate. That guy understands the way they coach and communicate better. So it's an open book at the running back position and the corner position with these 2 new coaches. And safety with Terry Joseph in a weird way, but he's going to know the personnel.
And they're deep at safety. It's almost, that's an embarrassment of riches. That's to Jeff's point too about playing more 3 high. I think you do need a big nickel package situationally and matchups in the SEC. But I think you're going to have a nickel that can cover, because once you play a good quarterback, they're going to try to go after that guy. So you need both. I mean, and they're deep at safety, deep enough for it.
The other thing there, Rod, Jerry, you can piggyback on this because you saw more of the kid than I did. I think Jelani McDonald gives you the ability to be versatile.
Yeah.
But I like the role I envision for Maurice Blackwell is kind of basically like a dime linebacker.
Mm-hmm.
And Ty Anthony Smith would work really well in that.
Yeah.
So I think, and plus I've seen Ty Anthony Smith has some ball skills about him. So the more disruptors you can put on the field, and disruptors doesn't mean just guys getting after the quarterback. That means can you track the ball? Can you make a play on it? The more disruptors you can get on the field, the better. And I think Ty Anthony Smith is a disruptor.
I want to say this because somebody in the chat earlier said he wanted to see Texas pressure the quarterback more. I think he was talking about blitz percentage. I think it was Eli in the chat. But one of the things I wanted to add to that is, and I don't know how high of a blitz rate PK is ever really going to have, especially when you have the ability to bring 4 or 5 and get there.
Yeah.
But this is going to be the best group of linebackers Texas had in a long time, in my opinion, in terms of being able to rush the passer and create disruption. I think we're not going to talk about Brad Spence enough until he actually puts the pads on for Texas and makes a few plays. But having Anthony Hill, the ability to move him around a little bit more because of Brad Spence. We got to remember Brad Spence is going to be a 6'2", 245-pound third-year linebacker in the SEC that had 4.5 sacks last year and 55 tackles. What's he going to be like at Texas? I mean, with the talent around him. Leon Lafau, year 3, Ty Anthony Smith, year 2. And I know I'm not forgetting about the freshmen, but they're still freshmen. They have some time. But that core group of 4 linebackers, I think it's going to be the best Texas has put on the field in a long time, Rod. I really do.
Yeah. I could see them blitzing a little bit. I think they were 118th in blitz rate this past season, and they were getting a lot of organic pressure. But with those linebackers, I'm with you. I think it'd be a waste not to do it. Now, as Jeff, you always say, you got to earn the right to stop the run. But, that's going to be the first test for him. But I'm with you, Jerry. I think Anthony Hill should have double-digit sacks. I do. I think he's capable of it. I mean, but they got to put him in that situation a little bit more, and that means I'm with you putting him on the edge and moving him around. But I like that take. And that's why you got so many versatile athletes. That's why you got to be exotic on defense. You talked about Ty Anthony Smith and Jelani McDonald. Man, all these guys are very unique athletes in terms of the athletic profile. The more exotic you are, the better chance you got to get those guys on the field and maximize their talent. All right, before we get back, we'll get back to the staff updates and also spring football. I promise you that. Sorry for those. The lack of spring football.
Now, what do we call it?
I don't know. Because it definitely ain't happening. And trust me, folks, this is going to spread. I think it'll end up being the very common in college football where you just don't have spring football anymore. All right, but let's thank one of our sponsors for today's program, Laura Baker. Laura Baker is a very accomplished Austin realtor, and Laura and the Andy Allen team at Keller Williams can handle all of your real estate needs in the Austin area. Laura is not only a diehard Longhorn fan, but a longtime Austin real estate expert, so please give her a shout today, 512-784-0505, or you can reach out to her at Laura at AndyAllenTeam.com. As a matter of fact, one of the members of Laura's team there at Andy Allen, they're having an open house Sunday, 3 to 5 p.m. It's going to be open house at 10205 Milky Way. It's pretty nice, pretty swanky. So you can reach out to Cecilia Wynn, member of the Andy Allen team there at Cecilia at AndyAllenTeam.com, or you can give her a call at 512-201-1753 to find out more about the open house Sunday for 10205 Milky Way. Is actually, I'm looking at a picture of it. I wish I could show you. It's really nice.
Did either of you guys did y'all like Milky Way candy bars? Because that's what my sugar went straight.
See,
no, Rod, I don't see you as a big sweets guy.
No. Oh, I love sweets. No, I love.
What was your
I'm a Snickers guy. Snickers is probably top of my list, but Baby Ruth wasn't bad. Kit Kat's not bad.
Yeah, I always get grief for being a Baby Ruth guy. So
I don't give you that Baby Ruth solid.
Quality.
I like a nice payday bar every now and then.
Wow, my dad liked paydays. What's different than paydays? My chocolate is too plain. That's like PK before Johnny Nance, and I don't like the PK. I want someone give me something a little added exotic on there, man. Give me something.
I'm more Greg Robinson when it comes to my candy.
Leo hit mine. Butterfinger all day long. Yeah, you know what's funny? I saw whatchamacallit, man. I hadn't heard that one in a long ass time, man. So I was with TJ Ford's brother, Tim Ford, last week, and we were talking, and he was training the kid, and this kid's go-to is like a Wendy's Frosty. And I asked Tim, I said, Tim, I think maybe Tim said to me, what was TJ Ford's go-to? Because, I covered him like I was at like 68 of his 75 games in through Texas. I said, I never once saw TJ Ford without a honey bun.
Honey bun.
Quality. To this day, TJ Ford is still like a honey bun guy, man. See? Like if you go in his office, there's going to be a honey bun in that office somewhere. And like Butterfinger and mayo, I'll try it. Anything.
He'd had an NIL deal with a honey bun company.
Oh, you think that would have been amazing.
Yeah. That'd have been so natural for him. Oh, I can't forget Nestle Crunch Bar is also quality candy bar.
It's funny, Jerry, you mentioned that because one of the images that I remember of TJ during his career at Texas, ESPN the magazine did a big spread on him his sophomore year. And I remember like it wasn't the feature image, but like you turn the page, it's like the next big image. It was TJ sitting on like leaning up against the wall with a Krispy Kreme bag. Yeah, just going to town on Krispy Kreme donuts. Yep. I'm like, well, I guess when you're the national player of the year, you can kind of eat whatever the hell you want.
He could eat anything he wanted for 35 years and never gain a pound.
That's fantastic. All right, I want to get back to the staff updates, guys. Just to the recruiting department, front office, you're going to call it personnel department. Getting back to it, Jamal Fenner also got moved, promoted. He's the director of player development and high school relations now. Aaron Joe, we talked about him. He's now the director of scouting for Texas. Josh Dunson, who they brought on as well, senior player personnel coordinator. And they have here Tanner Martin, scouting coordinator, and Jordan Mitchell is the recruiting and retention strategy coordinator. Retention strategy, I like that. See, that's such something you wouldn't think about, back in the day. But I mean, it makes retention is a key element in building a championship roster these days. Just keeping guys on the roster. I don't even know what that entails. What is a retention strategist? What is retention strategist? What is that?
Yeah. That's. I mean, that one's right there. I mean, he is part of retaining guys, the relationships with those guys, the retaining the guys from hitting the portal. He's big part of that communication, I would say, from the agent side and the player side. I think, look, Aaron Joe is really underrated hire. So Texas fans, Soonerland. I agree with this on Aaron Joe. Aaron Joe was the GM of Georgia Tech football, and he's a Lakeland, Florida guy. He has connections all over the state of Florida and Georgia. And he did a really good job as a GM of Georgia Tech. They built a pretty talented roster for their recruiting level at Georgia Tech there. I think he is the underrated hire of all these guys. Again, and Josh Dunson is an Atlanta guy. Yep. So there's a theme here. Yeah, Orfe recruited Florida. Chad Scott from Plant City, Florida, recruited Florida in the Southeast. And if you want to get more into North Carolina, he's got that. Kenoto Hudson, it really wasn't about his recruiting, but a Tampa guy. But Aaron Joe, a Lakeland guy who's been at Georgia Tech. Josh Dunson from Atlanta. I mean, there's a reason Texas is offering more kids in those states than ever. And I think Sark has pretty much maximized his staff's ability to recruit in Georgia and Florida. Does that mean you're going to go get Justice Terry every year? It does not. But where I think Aaron Joe is so important is because there's less days on the road for coaches nowadays as the rules have changed around recruiting. If you have to have a great scouting department, you can't take 50, 60 guys to Kenny Baker, a D-line coach, say, hey, man, just go watch all these guys. No. You have to know what Kenny Baker wants, what he's looking for. And you have to be able to, when you find those guys and you get that list shrunk down for him, and Kenny or any position coach will watch a lot of guys, but you got to do the legwork for him. You got to call and make sure you're not wasting his time. You don't want a guy to go on the road and waste their time on a prospect. and say, hey, man, we're Texas. We wear the jersey or we wear the polo. We can get in on anybody. That doesn't – no, even Georgia can't get in on everybody. Alabama, there's some kids you're just not going to be able to get in on. So that position, I think, he is a very underrated hire because I really think he's going to tie recruiting together and the advanced scouting of prospects. So when these coaches go on the road, there is no time wasted because you don't have as many days. So you're going because like when a Jeff Banks he has to spend pretty much a whole day going to Brunswick, Georgia. I mean, what else is around Brunswick? It's not like you're going to St. Simon's Island or Sea Island and hanging out at the beach, right? I mean, that you're pretty much going there for one stop. And so that's going to take up most of your day on the road. You have to absolutely know the ins and outs of that recruitment, that your time is well spent there. But then when you're in Atlanta, you can't just go send 3 coaches to 75 schools there. Those days are over. You have to really have a great understanding of the prospects. Are these guys really good enough? You had to talk to people at the high schools and around these kids, and you have to know, because you have less days on the road, that your staff is not wasting time. There's no time to be wasted anymore in this calendar at all.
That's a great point. Yep. No, it can't be a coincidence, Jeff, the recruiting connections of all the coaches they've hired and the ones they have on the staff. Like it is definitely a strategic, premeditated plan and vision that Sark is executing here.
Yeah, there wasn't much from the Charlie Strong era that I would try to replicate if I'm a head coach at Texas. But one thing that I like that they did was you look at some of their out-of-state takes, like Puna Ford didn't have a ton of options coming out. Malcolm Roach was a guy LSU didn't really want. Guys like that. Chris Nelson was another under-the-radar guy. Some of the out-of-state takes from that era ended up being some of the best players on some pretty decent Texas teams. So, and Malcolm Roach and Puna Ford, those 2 guys still in the league. So that, Jerry, I don't know if that's what you were getting at, but yeah, if you could find those kind of under the radar guys, maybe you get in them before Georgia or Alabama or Florida State figure out who they are, so you can get a leg up and you're not having to do what you did with Justice Terry, which is get in the race in the middle and then have to work like hell to try to win it. Maybe you can get in early with some guys that can be players for you.
I mean, you think about, everybody talks about Atlanta. South Georgia has a lot of talent, but you can't send a coach down there because you hit two or three schools in a day, right? I mean, it's not – you just don't have enough time on the road. Florida, for instance, I mean, I lived down there 6 years. You know how long it takes to drive from Palm Beach to Miami in traffic nowadays? Forget about it. Forget about it. And then there's talent up the Space Coast, Jacksonville. There's talent in the Panhandle. Texas just offered their first Panhandle kid, Trenton Henderson at Pensacola. There are good players all around these states. You have to know where they are, and you have to know where they are early so you don't waste your coach's time and be able to get in on these kids, get these kids on campus. Then you send your coaches out on the road. I think Aaron Joe is going to be a home run hire for Texas. And I just love, again, Alan Clark's a Baton Rouge guy, Louisiana guy, because Texas lost a little bit in Louisiana when Bo Davis went to LSU, because it was him and Terry Joseph and Brandon Harris helping with a little legwork there. But they lost a little bit in Louisiana just from a long-standing connections guys in Louisiana. But Alan Clark being from Baton Rouge, I think that's going to help Terry Joseph in that state as well.
Yeah. Hey, Jerry, is there I know back in the day we used to talk about Louisiana. It's kind of, once you get north of Baton Rouge, it's kind of a different world, and you're more likely to get a kid from Shreveport, Monroe. Is there still talent that northern part of Louisiana?
Yeah. Okay. There is. West Monroe may not be quite as talented as they were, but now Dylan Berryman from Ouachita Parish, the defensive tackle, the nose, zero tech, one tech type guy. He's officially visiting June 13th, and I think if Texas pushes, they can win that. But yeah, I mean, look, there's still a lot of talent in Shreveport in those areas, Central Louisiana, Alexandria, and all those areas Texas really has never recruited before. They've pretty much stayed on I-20, Shreveport to Monroe, Ruston, those areas, and then south, obviously Baton Rouge, New Orleans, all across I-10. But yeah, there's still a lot of talent in those northern areas. But again, I think, like Aiden Anding.
Yeah.
Texas got in on him early, and then once the LSU offer came. But again, this is knowing these areas, right? Aiden Anning, Texas might have won out for as long as LSU didn't offer.
Yeah.
Even though LSU came in late, his head coach is Kyle Williams, is a really good player at LSU. There's a number of guys on that staff. So you really have to do your homework on that. And I think Texas did the right thing going after Aiden Anning, because I think the guy's a tremendous player. And they just lost out because LSU lost out on some other guys and offered late and could do it and still win out for the kid. But there's talent all over the Southeast region. It's why it's so important to find the kids early and know, is it really worth my guy's time? If I'm Aaron Joe and Josh Dunson, and I know people say, well, NIL cures everything, but you can't. That doesn't mean you get every kid. Is it really worth our guy's time? Because we don't have as many days on the road as we used to.
Yep. And that's why it's crazy, Jerry, you said it, because, I mean, that's a great kind of summary of where recruiting is going. Because I saw it in 2020 and said, man, all these guys are from metro areas. All these guys going from the league, I was like, they're just, it's like a lot more of them were just from, you know, back in the day, it was like everybody was spaced out. I was like, nah, seeing a lot more of these guys are from just Houston and Dallas. So I started keeping track of it. And to your point, I mean, that's why even Texas, right? Take Texas, huge. So 75% of Texans live within the Texas Triangle.
Yeah.
With Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, and Austin. Right,
I mean, the reality is the Golden Triangle still has a lot of talent, but it's not as talented as it once was. Why? Because people have moved to Houston for work. East Texas, still a lot of talent, but it's not what it was in the 90s and early 2000s. Why? I think people have moved to DFW for work. I mean, it's just a natural progression there in the metro areas, no different from Atlanta. People have moved into that state in Atlanta for work purposes. So I think that's kind of the natural progression we've seen.
Yep. No, you can follow a lot of pattern, like migration patterns across the country. Population booms, and you can do a lot of predicting on where the recruiting booms are going to be. All right, good stuff there, guys, about the staff updates. All right, let's hit some questions, and then we'll get to a couple of the topics, including the spring game that will not be happening on the 40 acres. We'll talk about that. But first, hit us a question from John. Question says, team, y'all's thoughts on possible running back pickup in portal. Wisner, the only proven back. Gibson, constant fumbles. Hearing Baxter won't be ready to mid-season. Not saying it's the kid from West Virginia. All right, thoughts on this? Jeff, what are your thoughts about a running back pickup in the portal?
Yeah, I know they kicked the tires on some guys in the winter window. I don't think anything really obviously nothing materialized. Yeah, I'm all for it. Like, that's a position that once you think, okay, we got enough, that's usually the time you have a couple of injuries, and then you're like, well, I wish we could have taken another running back. But I think it's got to fit. I'm not a fan of just taking it back just to take it. I think it's got to be, if you can find somebody that has like that Jaden Blue type skill set that maybe you don't have on the roster right now.
Yeah.
So it's got to be something from that point that fits and makes sense.
I mean, look, if a running back enters the portal, this is what Texas faces, and I totally agree with you. Well, if you were running back entering the portal and you were looking around, you'd look at Texas and say, well, they got the guy back that rushed for 1,000 yards. And, the young kid Gibson played a lot. Oh, and the Baxter guy's coming off ACL. Where are the touches? Because there's going to be some other places that look better. If you jump in the portal, you're not jumping unless you know where you're going. You're not jumping in the portal to go be number two or be in a battle for number two.
Yep.
That's the thing with the portal. So I agree with Jeff. It's got to be the right fit. At Texas, a lot of people ask about the West Virginia kid. I mean, he is, if he were to jump in the portal, he's a smaller back, but a really tough runner, quick feet, man. He really does he fit the scheme? Does he fit what Sark and them do within their scheme, in their run game? So I think it'll be interesting. What I think, and that's what with Cedric Baxter, this is kind of what we've been talking about. He's probably going to be ready to be back full speed in August, but that doesn't mean he's going to be ready for football contact in September. Yeah. And that's what we've been. He had a major surgery, and you don't want to rush him back from that, because if he does it again, his career is really in jeopardy at that point. So there's going to be a patience of pace with him. That's why I've said what I think the determining factor for me in the spring with the portal running back will be two things. How good does James Simon look early on? And it's maybe tough because there's not padded spring practice. And does Jarrett Gibson make a jump? Does it look like he's going to make a jump in year 2? Better ball protection, eyes up after first contact more consistently. If they don't go to the portal for running back guys, to me that means they really like what they've seen from James Simon, and they think Jarrett Gibson's going to be a much improved player in year 2.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff, guys. Thanks for the question there, John.
Let's
Let's get
quick on that. I'll just add. I mean, how many of us? Trey Wisner had a hell of a year, and I'm a Trey Wisner fan. How many of us were sitting here honestly at this point last year saying, "Oh, Trey Wisner's going to be 1,000-yard back"?
Nobody.
No, I mean, nobody would have called what he did against A&M, which is, I don't think we talk enough about. How much of a warrior was that night. So yeah, it's a position where I'm with you, Jerry. If they don't go to the portal, then there wasn't the need guy there, and they really like what they've got in-house.
Yeah.
Here, Jonathan says, in previous seasons, the spring game has been a massive asset for recruiting. I hope losing the spring game doesn't set us back. Yeah, we can talk about the spring game now. What will it? How will it affect recruiting, or will it affect recruiting at all?
I don't think it'll affect recruiting at all because, look, USC is not having a spring game. There's going to be some others. This is going to start a trend. Now, some teams already have their dates out this year, but I just think this whole thing's about to change. As long as there's a spring portal window open, and I'll say this before I get to the recruiting part, because I think there's another piece to that, but I want to say this. So, and this is probably a great comparison, but I think it's going to work for what I'm going to say. Do you know when COVID hit, you could no longer go to like a high school sporting event and pay cash for a ticket. Everything became online, right? QR code, boom, go online, buy your tickets. Has that changed now? No. It stayed the same. And you can point to a lot of other things like that. So I think this spring portal window is in longer seasons affording coaches probably something they've been thinking about for a long time. Mm-hmm. Let's do away with spring football, padded spring football, and let's go to the NFL model. Mm-hmm. And if in 3 years the spring portal goes away, I don't think you're going to see them change back. I think this is going to be the reasons they're using are going to be kind of where they wanted to take this for a while, and now they have a reason to take it there. And it's not going to go back. It's going to remain the same.
The benefits of it for colleges, for coaches, players, everybody, the benefits of it, they don't outweigh the risk at this point. And I think for Sark mentioned this a little bit in the Kay Adams interview. You got to think about how kind of Manila a spring game is in terms of kind of what you want to show, what you can get done. I just think at the end of the day, so I don't think Sark hasn't come out and said this. I don't think he will. It's kind of a wasted day. It's a wasted developmental day. It's a day where maybe you could be inside the bubble, getting all the work done that you want to get done, but you can't because the country is watching your spring game. Yeah. So, Jerry, I think the only way it would come back is if, depending on who you are, whether you're the Big Ten or the SEC, if you're Fox or ESPN, said we have to have that content for inventory.
Yeah.
Then I think
ESPN's not happy. ESPN can't be happy about Arch Manning not having a spring game, by the way.
Right. Yeah, but that's the only way I see it changing is if TV said, no, we're paying you all this money. You gotta give us a spring game. Other than that, there's no, and I think for me, it goes back to, hey, coaches are losing more control over stuff. This is something they can control. Sark or Matt Rule or Lincoln Riley, whoever can say, yeah, I can't tell these guys who they can talk to or what NIL deals they can get, but I can damn sure control who watches my spring game, who watches my team practice.
Yeah. No, there are multiple reasons, right? You got the reasons Sark is given about, longer seasons and, player fatigue and that kind of stuff, and being worried about player injuries. And then you got people thinking about tampering and poaching and transfer talent. There are too many good reasons the coach is giving. I agree with you, Jeff. If the networks, obviously who got the television contracts with these conferences, if they decided to put some pressure on the conferences, maybe something can happen. But I mean, hell, I bet the language in the contract say, no, it's for the season and not necessarily for spring. I don't know how they would do it, but I think the coaches are now going to use this, and I agree with both your guys' points. They're going to use this to make this now a common trend, and it's going to continue off all levels of college football, unfortunately. I think even the small-time programs, they're worried about their kids being poached, so they're going to use it as a reason. The big-time programs like Texas are going to use it as, hey, I got more to lose than the game. Injury, risk, guys getting tampered with. So, like I said, it's one of those things where I don't know if where the new landscape of college football, I don't know if there's a place for spring games and spring football.
Yeah. And from a recruiting perspective, I don't think it'll hurt Texas at all. Texas, March 29th, I'm hearing it's going to be a weekend. They're going to have a lot of kids in. Howard, the corner out of Edna Carr, told me yesterday he's coming in that weekend for a visit. So I don't think it's going to hurt Texas recruiting at all. In a weird way, it could actually help them a little bit more because they don't have to deal with all the spring game stuff. So I don't think it's going to affect recruiting at all. I really don't.
Yeah, I think this is kind of like Rod, back when you were playing, it was a deal where kind of anybody could go to practice, right? Especially fall camp. It's open to the public. There was a point where Max just like, I can't just shut this down because I need a reason to shut this down. And when he found his reason, he shut it down. I think this is one of those deals where coach has been looking for a valid reason, however valid it may be, to do away with the spring games, and they found their reason.
They got it. Yeah, no doubt. Tex-Mex Horn, he says, good afternoon, Rod, Jerry, and Jeff. Watched Sark's interview with Kay Adams yesterday, which is where he broke the news there won't be a spring game. Sark seems like the smoothest, most unique, good guy in college football. How much does this help in recruiting? He's talked about his culture of vulnerability. I think he talked about it again on the Kay Adams show. He talked about it, I believe, with Joe Klatt before as well, and probably mentioned his other interviews. And that culture of vulnerability, opening up to your teammates. They have their culture days where they do activities, has nothing to do with football, get in different groups and get to know each other. And he's talked about how that culture of vulnerability has actually helped win them games, and it's helped them become closer as a team, the brotherhood. So, I mean, he seems pretty genuine about his journey, but also about helping young men. He does seem to be genuine authentic about that.
Yeah, and I think that's the real thing. It's genuine, authentic, and because of, I've said this before, because of what I think helps Sark in recruiting, it's more than personality, because he's changed a little bit from a recruiting standpoint. As far as, even though he really likes to play a long game, he's had to push a little bit earlier through conversations because recruiting in the state of Texas is so much more aggressive. He changed that after the 22 cycle, but didn't change his overall plan in recruiting, if that makes sense. But if you're not genuine today, in today's day and age, you are going to get smoked in recruiting, because every interview he's ever done, you can go find it on YouTube. You can find clips on social media. And if you get into these areas where you're not genuine in recruiting, whether with kids, parents, the circles of these people, anybody can go look and find something you said and said, that doesn't pass my smell test, guys.
Mm-hmm.
And you better be genuine nowadays, because if you aren't, you're going to get greatly exposed by YouTube. All the interviews you've ever done, they're archived. People can look up things you've said in the past. So being genuine has never been more important for college coaches in recruiting than now. But I do it all the time. I can go look up. You can go look up anything Kirby Smart said 6 years ago, pretty much, right? 5-6 years ago in an interview.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? If that something doesn't mesh, if I'm a parent, I'm like, I don't know. I'm going to need to ask another question about this. So I think it's very vitally important for college coaches nowadays. And
if you're not, they leave anyway via the transfer portal.
Yeah, that's right.
Like if you're disingenuous with them, it's like, well, then hell, I'm gone after 1 year. It's like, well, there's no point in, putting up a facade or being dishonest in the process.
Yeah. Yeah. It's you got to be smart too. One thing that I've praised Sark for, and there may be an example here or there, he's done a really good job of, especially in press conference settings when he's on the record, not making statements that are going to back him into a corner later. Mm-hmm. Whether it's a position battle, whether it's in recruiting, whether it's the portal, whatever it is, he hasn't taken such a hardline stance on those sensitive topics, like you just said, Jerry, where you can look back and say, well, that wasn't what you were saying, 6 months ago or 8 months ago or a year ago or whatever. And I mean, let's be honest. I mean, this is, the kind of the elephant in the room. A lot of guys, you talk to prospects, parents, whoever, a lot of guys that were recruited to Texas when Tom Herman was in charge, the guy that they met during the visit process, the recruiting process, suddenly wasn't the guy at all that they showed up to play for. Now, the good thing was it's Texas, so you always are going to get players. And two, a lot of those assistant coaches on his staff did a really good job forming relationships with players. But that's kind of what we're talking about. It's like kids can – I think sometimes we underestimate how intelligent some, not granted, everybody's a knucklehead at a time or two, but 17, 18, 19-year-old kids, sometimes we underestimate how smart and intuitive they are. They can smell BS.
Yes.
They know when you're being fake. And
Rod, you probably had somebody in your recruiting pitches back in the day that you're like, nah.
Yeah. No, you're right about that. That's a good point. I agree. I mean, I just didn't have a good feeling about them. I was like, nah, I go with the guys I genuinely believe were good people, but also were being honest with me throughout the process the whole time. So you're right about that. I mean, and it could be mom and dad too. Like mom and dad were like, nah, I don't like that. Back in the day, we didn't have access to research like this and internet and stuff kind of stuff. We got to go off, kind of the
street spark and feel.
Yeah, the feel, right? It's like, no, I need to sit down with them eye to eye, and I need to talk to them for a while. Now, there's less of that, I think, and now I'm with you. Now I got a record of it everywhere. That's a great point, Jerry. You're right about that.
There's a reason why Rod of his finalists, why he eliminated Penn State fairly quickly.
Oh man.
Had that intuition about that, didn't you, Rod?
Thank God it wasn't in my final two, but they were in my final five, unfortunately. Oh, and I never took the visit. Something told me, don't go visit, just you go. I never took the visit.
At least you weren't a linebacker at a middle school camp.
Oh, dude. We're not going there. All right, let's get back to it. How about this one? It's 420 somewhere. He said, hey, Jerry, I think Jerry might have kind of answered this or got into this when we talked about the staff updates. Hey, Jerry, do you eventually see system changing to coaches having to travel less for recruiting and only do the recruiting on campus, or to close and having just recruiting specialists be road dogs?
I don't. And here's why. Because it's the same reason I like to go on the road and see these kids in person. Is the tape tells you one thing. Yes, when they come on a campus, you get to see them. And every kid that walks through that door at Texas, they do height, weight, wingspan, hand size. They do that. They don't test them all like that. They do the wingspans, the hand sizes. Mm-hmm. But there's still a big component of when you go to the school to see the kid in person. And I think a lot of people think of it, you just want to watch them practice. Yeah, you do, or play on a Friday night. But you want to go talk to people in the school. The best recruiters of all time, they go to the counselor's office. They go talk to the trainer. They go talk to people who are around the kid. When the trainers see the kid, a lot of these kids more than the coaching staffs do. So you want to go talk to people. If you're really looking for fits, if you're not just trying to collect talent but build a team, you want to go ask questions. And you want to go talk to the counselor. Maybe talk about the kid. Maybe the parents, interactions they've had with the parent. Talk to the trainer. How is he to work with when you see him on a daily basis? What's his mood like? Yeah. How's he handles the high? Because the trainer sees the kid in the low points a lot of times. How is he? What's his demeanor? If you're really doing this to find the best fits and evaluate this as to the nth degree in kids, you want to go to these schools and you want to see these kids in person. It can't just be about them coming to your camp. Now, I don't think you go see as many kids as you used to. That's why I think the Aaron Joes, where things are changing and you don't have as many days on the road. But I still think seeing kids in my job, I just don't feel good about talking about these kids as much as I do if I don't go out and see them. Yeah. And talk to their coach. And it doesn't have to be their head coach. It may be the DC. Hey, man, the tight end, what kind of effort does he give daily? Just so I have a feel for the kid, right? And nuggets I can throw you guys. College coaches are doing it the same way, but with a lot more on the line.
Good stuff there. All right. Let's thank our friends over at Flat Creek before we'll answer a couple of more questions, and then we'll get ready to end our live stream for today. Did you know the most awarded wine in Texas is actually the vineyard closest to Austin? That's right, folks. Flat Creek Estate Winery is just minutes from downtown Austin, and they've won award after award this year for their vintage wine, Super Texan. Super Texan is now available at your local Specs, so you can give it a try there. Also, they have a display at your local Central Market. I actually saw that recently, and very happy. The good word is getting out about the fantastic wine from Flat Creek Estate Winery. Also, they not only produce some of the best premium wines on the market, Flat Creek is also a gorgeous venue with barbecues, wine tastings every single weekend. Perfect for a day date with your significant other or a weekend getaway with your significant other. So check it out today, flatcreekestate.com, and you can make reservations there. And also you can book it for very special occasions. We had a member of the On Texas football family recently get engaged there at Flat Creek Estate Winery. So we really appreciate them, and they can really host any and every occasion there at Flat Creek Estate Winery. So we appreciate them at flatcreekestate.com. All right, let's get a couple of more questions in here. How about this one from Jose? He says, Jerry and Jefe, what is a good indicator that a recruit has hit their potential? Is getting invited to the combine the ultimate metric? That is a good question. Is everybody a little different in the scale, or is it just like, hey, is just getting drafted?
That's a really good question. Go ahead, Jeff. Let me think about that for a second.
Yeah, I you said the word that I was thinking of, Rob, when I saw this question, scale. I mean, I think, hey, Quinn Ewers is going to get drafted. He was a multiple-year starter at Texas. Did he hit his potential? No, but then you also got to look at the indicators, right? Like, was it his talent? Was it health? Was it multiple coaching changes? Was it just a faulty regime? Was it a talent around somebody issue? To me, if you're going to go on one metric, and I may be wrong, I think the minute you step across the chalk line and you play a snap in a National Football League regular season game, I think you made it.
Ding, ding, ding. Yeah, I like that.
You look. I've always broke it down like this, like the special guys you see, right? Adrian Peterson, Vince Young,
Myles Garrett,
TJ Ford, Myles Garrett, Kevin Durant of the world that I've been lucky enough to see, Jadeveon Clowney, those guys, they're going to get drafted unless something catastrophic happens. It has to be catastrophic for those guys. You think about Zach Evans at North Shore, extremely talented, issue after issue after issue. The guy still went in the 6th round.
Yeah.
Still went in the 6th round. He had 935 yards in year 3 at Ole Miss. He left TCU. He had some issues being late for meetings, all sorts of stuff. He got sent home before his state championship game his senior year. North Shore still won, still got drafted. So those guys are what they are. And it takes something catastrophic for those guys not to make it. Outside of that, I've always said this. If you're outside of that top 50 level prospect in the country in football, from the difference at 51 to 150 for the same positional player isn't that big of a difference maker. I mean, it's really not. It's, maybe you're half an inch taller at the time. Maybe you ran 0.05 faster in the 40, had a little bit better shuttle. Maybe your arms are an inch longer. Maybe your hands are a little bigger. Maybe you're a little more productive in high school. But the difference isn't that great. There's a reason, that Nick Saban had as many guys come to the camp as he did when he had it rolling, because he wanted to be able to pick between those guys and make sure he was making the right decisions in terms of fit, because there were guys were so close to each other. So there's just not a ton of difference there. Then you get to your other guys, your Puna Fords, like you brought him up earlier. I'll never forget the day I went to Hilton Head High School. I was over rankings at 24/7 Sports at the time, and I went to Hilton Head to see him. I think he was committed. He was about to commit to Louisville, or hadn't committed yet, or was about to. I can't remember which. He had the longest arms of any 5'11" person I've ever seen in my life. I've never seen anybody with longer arms than that. But when you talk to the kid, he had that chip on his shoulder, Rod. You played with those guys that everybody doubts you, and it's not a negative chip. It's a positive chip on his shoulder. Yeah. It's not the man, I'm being screwed through recruiting and all this sucks. It's now I'm going to go. I got some people to prove wrong. I've kept receipts, right?
Mhm.
And those are kind of the things you look for. But I'm with you, Jeff. If you get drafted, you play a game in the NFL. I mean, look at Jordan Whittington. He was a 5-star ranked prospect out of high school. Whether he was or not, whether you agree with that or not, he was. I didn't see him as a 5-star prospect. I saw him as a great football player. But think about all the injuries he went through just to make it and get drafted in the NFL. He maximized his talent. So there's so many answers to that. But I really think that for the most part, if you're a kid that was a highly ranked player and you end up playing in the NFL, it's hard for me to call you a bust because kids are going to make mistakes. Zach Evans certainly did not and still has not to this day maximized his talent because he was very gifted. But even with that said, he's still found the way to make it. I don't know if he's going to stick, but he's still found the way to make it.
I'll give you two good examples that I like that kind of show you the difference between two highly ranked guys. The two Malcolm Browns, right? Like running back Malcolm Brown. Did he leave Texas as an all-conference guy? Did he have as many yards as I thought he was going to have? No. Malcolm Brown, he didn't get drafted, but Malcolm Brown played 8 years in the league and had a coach like Sean McVay who, there was one year, that 22 season where Malcolm thought he was retired. Suddenly the Rams have an injury. And it's Sean McVay calling and be like, hey, you want to come back and play a little bit? We can get you a little bit of coin. So Malcolm Brown had value in the NFL, just like defensive tackle Malcolm Brown. Some people might say, well, maybe the Patriots should have taken somebody else in the first round. Okay, that's debatable. 5-star prospect, All-American, first-round pick, 2-time Super Bowl champion. That's an outstanding career. Yeah. And there's no way you can call that a bust. No way. I wouldn't call it a bust. That's a hell of a career.
Good stuff. All right. Was a couple of more questions, and then we'll end it. David Keith Williams says, Mayo Hamilton. I know players are not yet in pads, but what have you recently heard about Neto Umeozulu? To me, Umeozulu is one of the most important Longhorns this spring. He has to play well.
I haven't heard much there. I mean, this is obviously it's not spring practice, but this is a big spring for him because he has the inside track to be the starting left guard, and it's up to him to hold off the competition. I think with the areas he's going to be a difference maker in the run game. He isn't nothing against Hayden Carter's going to the NFL Combine. We just had this conversation, but Neto he would be an upgrade in the run game. At left, he moves people. He's a mover of other human beings. So you upgrade in your run game there. The whole key is pass pro. Yep. And what he is, that's been a big development part for him is assignment and execution, right? In pass pro. And that DJ Campbell, that's been big for him. Now he's been on the field. But Neto, I think I haven't heard anything, anything that's one way or the other on him. I've heard Zena. There's some really high hopes for Zena. We had it in the year 2 in the program. I have heard that. People really like where he could go. But with Neto, I think it's simply going to come down to assignment. If he is assignment sound and pass pro, he is a hellacious run blocker, guys. I mean, he improves your short zone and red zone offense as from a run blocking standpoint. You aren't pushing him around.
Yeah. The pass pro piece becomes more imperative because you're going to throw a higher percentage of deep balls and a longer develop who plays with heart.
Yes.
So pass pro becomes a bigger, especially for those three interior guys. I don't worry about Gooseby or maybe even Baker as much, but those 3 interior guys, especially, they're going to need to turn the corner pretty quick.
Yep. Yeah. All right, Jerry, would you do us a favor and tell the good folks out there about our last sponsor for today's live stream, my good friends over at South Point Dodge?
I could. I'm sharing this show with these 2 Austin guys. If they're not driving South Point, they should be. Hey, Texas football fans, score an easy point. South Point needs to hook them up. Score an easy point this season and next season. When you get to the point at South Point Dodge has over 600 vehicles in stock. And their award-winning sales staff doesn't do games or gimmicks. They just get straight to the point by getting you the very best deal in town. So score big today at South Point Dodge. Come see us off I-35 in South Austin or at southpointdodge.com. Get to the point at South Point Dodge. South Point Dodge is Austin's automotive everything. Looking to sell your car? Get to South Point's best offer over the phone or online. Again, I-35 in Austin, South Austin, or southpointdodge.com. Hook our boys up.
All right. Thank you, Jerry, for that. We appreciate that. And we appreciate our friends over at South Point Dodge. We also appreciate all of you guys for joining us today, for watching and for listening. Thank you to all of our sponsors, of course. Thank you to Laura Baker, of course, the accomplished Austin realtor. Thank you to southpointdodge.com. Thank you to flatcreekestate.com as well. And thank you to Tackle Addict. .com for sponsoring today's live stream. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes. He is the real MVP. Can't do it without him. Jerry, we appreciate you as well and all your expertise. Jeff, thank you for all the nuggets. Hey,
Rod, can we leave with one question I want you to answer?
Yeah, please do. Please do.
It's 420 somewhere asked a question that I've wanted to ask you your opinion on. Does Manning's mobility make the interior pass pro less important? It kind of feeds off of what we were just talking about. I want to add this piece before we get out of here. Because Arch is going to want to throw – because Texas, I think, with Sark and Arch are going to want to throw the ball down the field more.
I agree with that.
You're going to see more A-gap blitzes. How are people going to try to get after Arch this year? It's an interesting question.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that because I think they'll move the pocket a little bit more too.
They will.
I think they'll move the pocket and move him around a little bit more with some bootlegs and some waggles. So that would be interesting. I think Sark. I think Arch naturally wants to throw the deep ball, and I think Sark wants the deep ball infused back in his offense. So I do think it'll happen early on. The pass protection, I think Arch is going. I talked about this before. I think Arch is going to bring the scramble element back to Texas and the scramble drill downfield. Yep. So to answer your question, I do think I said you need pass protection no matter what, but he gives you a little margin for error. I think he's going to give you that a little bit, especially if they want to get deeper into progressions and naturally throw the football vertically downfield a little bit more. But
I think one thing we've talked about too, Rod, and you probably don't want to show this against Ohio State. It might be rolling the dice. It will be rolling dice. But stuff like, hard play action with your back to the defense, that may be stuff that you might more want to roll out like for, Sam Houston or one of those games.
It's a great point.
Kind of work on it against San Jose State. You probably don't want to call a ton of that against Ohio State.
That's a great point. Didn't think about that. But I do think they'll go some of that hard, old school kind of play action stuff too. And Jeff brought up a great point on Football Theory. You should go check it out. You insulate the pass protection. Another offensive lineman, the 6-0 line package when you're trying to go downtown. May not all necessarily always help with your interior pass protection, but having another body actually gives you a numbers advantage in pass protection. So another way to think about it too. All right. Thank you guys for all of your participation and the questions. If you missed any of them, we apologize. We'll have another live stream coming up Sunday night with myself, and that'll be fun too. I don't know who else is coming on the live stream on Sunday. I don't know who's going to be on there. But it'll be the crew. We got enough guys. We'll make it happen. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes. Thank you to Jeff. Thank you to you, Jerry, as well. Thank you to all of you guys out there for watching and for listening. And until next time, Hook 'em Horns.